Sometime in the early 10th century, a Persian geographer named Ibn Rustah crossed into the lands of the Slavs. He was cataloging the peoples of the known world for a geographical encyclopedia he would later call the Book of Precious Records. When he reached the forest steppe zone of what is now Western Russia, he saw something he had never encountered before. The people lived underground. Subscribe and comment for more medieval videos. Not in natural caves, not in temporary shelters. They had deliberately dug rectangular pits into the earth, fitted them with pointed wooden roofs that resembled the peaks of churches, and then covered everything in soil until the dwellings almost completely disappeared into the hillside. Inside these subterranean homes, he found stone stoves, families living comfortably, and a level of thermal efficiency that seemed impossible in such extreme cold. He wrote, "The cold in their country is so severe that each of them digs a kind of cellar in the ground." Ibn Rustah did not fully understand the sophisticated physics behind what he was witnessing. Neither did anyone else for another 1,000 years. These structures were called Zemlyanka, from the Russian word zemlya, meaning earth. And the engineering principles that allowed these homes to function effectively at temperatures as low as -49 degrees Fahrenheit, -45 degrees Celsius, are only now being validated by modern building science and energy modeling. Today, we're going deep into how these shelters were built, what made them work so brilliantly, and how 5 interlocking systems turned a simple hole in the ground into one of the most thermally efficient dwellings ever constructed without electricity, fossil fuels, or modern insulation. Ibn Rustah was not the only chronicler to document these structures. An anonymous Persian manuscript from the same era described Slavic winter dwellings even more directly. The Slavs spend their winters in hollows and underground huts. These were not emergency shelters thrown together during times of crisis. Archaeological evidence from across Central and Eastern Europe, including modern-day Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, and southwestern Russia, shows that semi-subterranean dwellings were the dominant residential form across the entire forest steppe zone from the 5th century through the 10th century. That represents 500 years of continuous use. Half a millennium during which countless families were born, raised children, and died of old age in homes carved directly into the earth. In 2005, archaeologists excavating a 9th century Slavic settlement near Novgorod counted 23 foundation pits in a single village. Every single one had been dug below ground level. This was not because these people lacked timber. The surrounding forests stretched for hundreds of miles. They chose to build underground because, at -49 degrees Fahrenheit, a conventional surface house is a death trap. To understand why the Zemlyanka was so effective, you must first grasp one crucial fact about soil temperature. At a depth of approximately 10 feet, 3 meters, the temperature of the ground stabilizes dramatically. It no longer follows surface seasonal swings. In central Russia, surface air temperatures can swing from +95 degrees Fahrenheit, +35 degrees Celsius in July to -49 degrees Fahrenheit, -45 degrees Celsius in January, a staggering range of 144 degrees Fahrenheit. The soil at depth absorbs these extremes and barely moves. Research published in Renewable and Sustainable Energy Reviews shows that summer temperature peaks do not reach 10 feet until 3 months later, and winter cold does not penetrate until April. The Earth does not merely insulate, it acts as a massive thermal battery and time shifter, smoothing out brutal temperature swings. At that depth, the ground temperature in the Russian forest zone stabilizes between roughly 39 degrees Fahrenheit and 43 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 to 6 degrees Celsius, year-round. Not warm by any means, but dramatically better than surface air at -49 degrees Fahrenheit. That gap, over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 50 degrees Celsius, is the difference between life and death in Siberian winters. Russian peasants understood this instinctively and exploited it with nothing more than shovels, axes, and generations of accumulated knowledge. How the Zemlyanka was built, step by step. Site selection, the most critical decision. Builders did not choose flat ground. They specifically sought south-facing slopes with an angle between 15 degrees and 30 degrees, with the entrance oriented south or southeast. This single choice provided natural drainage to keep water away from the living space, passive solar gain during short winter days, protection from the dominant cold north and northwest winds. Excavation. They dug a rectangular pit, typically 10 to 13 feet wide and 13 to 20 feet long, going 5 to 6 feet below the surface. At that depth, a standing person could just touch the ceiling with their hand. These homes were small, but in minus 49 degrees Fahrenheit weather, warmth mattered far more than space. The walls were reinforced with horizontal logs, spruce, pine, or birch, notched at the corners using traditional log construction techniques. The logs were placed directly against the excavated earth, with packed clay or moss filling every gap. This created a double wall system. The inner logs provided a dry, maintainable surface, while the massive surrounding earth provided unmatched thermal mass. A central ridge beam supported rafters sloping down to the top of the earth walls. Layers of birch bark, nature's waterproof membrane, went over the rafters, followed by thick moss insulation, and finally 8 to 12 inches, 20 to 30 centimeters, of sod or packed earth. From a distance, a completed Zemlyanka looked like nothing more than a low mound in the hillside. A sloped passageway acted as a thermal trap. Cold, dense air sank and stayed in the lower part of the passage instead of flooding the main living space. This principle is now called an entry vestibule in passive house design. Slavic builders had been using it for centuries. The heart of the home was the Russian clay stove, Pechka. Unlike an open fireplace, it was a thermal mass heater with internal flue channels that forced hot smoke to travel a long path, transferring 80 to 90% of its heat into the masonry mass. One firing could provide warmth for 12 to 24 hours. The Zemlyanka succeeded because 5 systems operated in perfect harmony. Massive earth thermal mass for heat storage and release. The Pechka stove capturing and storing combustion energy. The airlock entrance trapping cold air. The birch bark plus sod roof sealing out moisture while insulating. South-facing orientation capturing passive solar gain. Together, these systems allowed a family to use only 1/4 to 1/3 of the firewood required by a conventional above-ground log cabin. Why we stopped building Zemlyankas. 3 main forces led to their decline. Social stigma. Underground homes became associated with poverty and backwardness. 19th century reforms. Government policies discouraged them in favor of modern surface houses. Soviet industrialization. The state prioritized speed, standardization, and mass-produced concrete over site-specific, climate-adapted designs. Despite this, the knowledge survived in remote regions like Yakutia, where traditional earth-sheltered homes still protect people at temperatures below minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 50 degrees Celsius. Modern earth-sheltered homes based on these principles can reduce heating energy use by 60 to 80%. The initial construction cost is higher, but the energy savings often pay back the premium within 8 to 12 years. After that, the savings continue for the life of the building. We traded shelters that ran on physics for shelters that run on fragile infrastructure. When that infrastructure fails, as it did in multiple Siberian cities in recent winters, there is no thermal mass to fall back on. The Zemlyanka was never primitive. It was a brilliant passive system disguised as a hole in the ground. Russian peasants didn't have R-value charts or computer modeling software. What they had was a principle refined over 1,000 years. The ground stays warm when the air does not build into it. Let the earth do the work. And 5 centuries of unbroken success proved they were right.